Hey, welcome to Questions Just Asked. Here we are, man. February is halfway done already, and we're headed to March. Hard to believe it, man. It just seems like we just celebrated New Year's just last week. Man, time is just flying. Hey, listen, I just want to let you all know at Questions Just Asked, I have a new ministry called Hope for the Community. Check out our website. It's at hopelowcountry.org. It's hopelowcountry.org. Check us out sometime. And if you need any questions asked, we're focusing in on creating community chaplains and also ministering to the single parent population. That's our main focus. But if you'd like to know more about it, give me an email. Or if you have questions you want to answer, John at hopelowcountry.org. That's John at hopelowcountry.org. Ask away. So here, let's get to our question. That's why you really tuned in today. And here's the question for the day. Isn't Sunday the most segregated day of the week? This will probably be a short answer. Yes, Sunday is one of the most segregated days of the week. However, it's not just the white population. I don't believe the Bible teaches us to segregate. I think this is more of a cultural phenomenon than anything. And one of the basics is we all like to be in a homogeneous group. And I do believe that there are worship differences based upon not the color of our skin, but our ethnic background. I did a mission trip to Mexico City. And in Mexico City, worship is drastically different than in any white or even black church in America. Children don't leave the service in Mexico City, and the people learn that the children are just part of it. Well, I'll tell you, in my church, if children are in the service and they start to cry, you would think that they committed the unpardonable sin. And then also, I've been to a couple of our African American chaplain services, and there's a difference in mainly the songs they sing. They sing still songs from historically that they are comfortable with in the black community. In the white population, we generally sing from hymns or modern praise songs. So some of it has to do with what we're accustomed to, what we like to worship. It has nothing to do with color skin. I got to tell you, some of the most amazing worships I have been in have been of worships that are not of the white middle class culture. And see, let me bring that up too. I think also part of what segregates us isn't just color of the skin. I think it's socioeconomic. I think while the Bible definitely teaches us in the book of Acts especially, let me tell you, in the book of Acts, they had a problem with communion. And here was the problem with communion around Acts, and it's addressed in the book of 1 Corinthians. The problem was the rich population was proceeding with communion, and the poorer population was coming in later in the evening after working, socioeconomic, how much money they made, whether they had to work or not, and there wasn't any communion left for them. And Paul said, no, you will wait for everybody for the sacrament of communion. There was to be no socioeconomic difference. We see in the early church that they would sell their possessions to make sure the needs, not the wants, the needs of a fellow brother or sister were met. And it wasn't communal living. That's what they did to make sure that they all had their needs met. A little different than our culture where, let's just face it, we're too fat and comfortable. Spendable income is a relatively new phenomenon in the history of America. Pre-World War I, II, you did not have a thing called spendable income. I went to China. They don't have spendable income. This isn't a question of socioeconomic status when you're all one. And what the Bible actually does is to unify us in Jesus Christ. The poor were supposed to be looking out for the rich were supposed to be looking out for the poor. But the poor were also to celebrate when somebody in the community had a blessing from God. So I also believe it's socioeconomic. It's hard to find a church that has an equal number of poor, middle class, and rich people in its congregation. And I'm going to tell you, that's flat out, that's to the shame of the church. But mainly, I think it's cultural. I think some of it has to do with language. There's Japanese churches There's Asian churches, there's Hispanic churches, and there's black and there's white churches. But I think it's mainly cultural more than anything. Do I wish it was different? Yeah, and some people really try hard to make a multicultural church. I know out in Maryland, before I left Maryland, a friend of mine wanted to have a multicultural church, and he tried to establish a multicultural church, but he gave up his efforts to do so because hey, that depends on the spirit of our Lord Jesus Christ. And we should be welcoming of any race, creed, and color that walks into our churches. Why? Because that's what Jesus did. Jesus welcomed all. You don't see Jesus. The only person Jesus rejected were the prideful, and arrogant. So if we're prideful and arrogant in our race, we're going to be rejected by Christ. So that's my answer. I know it probably doesn't satisfy. Hey, I love to say, hey, those who are white, go to an African American church this Sunday. I love to say those who are African American, go to white church. But in the end of the day, it's comfort. It's personal preference in worship. And there's definitely cultural backgrounds. I do think we ought to experiment a little bit and try some different cultural expressions. I know one time back in Maryland, a local black pastor and a white pastor got together and they decided to pastor each other's churches and bring each other's choirs to their churches on given Sundays of the month. It was awesome. It was great. But even after those Sundays, guess what happened? Everybody went back to their normal thing. So don't get too upset that it's segregated. It's segregated not just in color, it's segregated in social status, it's segregated in just the people we hang with. We have that problem in the Low Country. We have a lot of churches who have old people in them because we have a large retirement community and have no young people. That's a segregated community, and it has to be addressed. So hopefully it will get addressed. So I hope that answers your question. We're going to go on to next week's question, which will be February 25th, almost the end. And here's the question. Does Christianity say anything against racism? Great question. I look forward to answering that. See you next week.